Services Committee to order. Let it be recorded, Worry, Nicholson, Johnson are present. Burnett's excused. Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Worry, second by Johnson. Our discussion here, none. All in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried. Approval of minutes.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Johnson, second by Worry. Under discussion. Here, none. All in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried. Regular business. 1, consideration of possible action on request by Alderman Worry on future repairs, upgrades to Shawano Ave from Ashland to Oneida.
I skipped one.
Did I?
Yeah. I wonder if you're.
I must be in a
Wonder if
different,
you're in the old meeting, maybe? Was that last?
I even have a hard copy. Is that it?
Yeah.
With Stoyer? Okay. Let's do, okay.
I think you're in 2 weeks ago's meeting.
All right, 2 weeks
That's
ago,
why
that's
you're not
probably why I'm
today.
not in here. Let's, consideration of possible action on a request by Alderman Stoyer on review of parking policies near Brown County Courthouse. This is where it says joint
We
meeting.
received a letter from John A. Vanderleest, Clerk of Courts for Brown County. Recently, there was an individual who was testifying in circuit court over at the Brown County Courthouse. And he was surprisingly enough, he was the victim of a stolen vehicle. He was testifying on behalf of himself, getting his vehicle stolen. And while he was in court, the court hearing had been delayed, so the time expired on his meter, and he received a traffic citation for an expired meter. So Clerk of Courts and Judge Hammer are requesting that we allow folks who are providing testimony in the courthouse to park at the meters and not pay or plug the meters. Chris Pierlot, the operations director and parking manager, responded to Mr. Vanderleest and identified that the meters can only be used for the duration that's on the meter, a 30-minute, 1 hour, 2 hour meter. Anyone who's not sure of how long they're going to be parking or is going to be parking for an extended period of time should be parking in the ramp. And it's simply a matter of convenience. These folks want to park immediately outside of the door, go in, testify, get back in the car and leave without having to walk to the ramp. Unfortunately, that's not how our parking system works. Again, the meters are there, and providing that kind of a dedicated meter would be extremely difficult for us to enforce because there's no way for us to tell why that vehicle's parked there. There would be an opportunity, we could possibly talk about having Brown County essentially hood the meters and pay the meter hood rate, and that would dedicate some stalls on the street for their use, but again, we would have no way to police that and determine who's properly parking there or improperly utilizing those on-street stalls. So we have responded back to the Clerk of Courts and to the Judge Hammer, indicating that this is not something that Parking Division is necessarily interested in because of the difficulties in enforcing it, and because the option for long-term parking exists simply by crossing Walnut Street at the Cherry Street ramp. So there is a ready solution there, and we know that jurors and people going to the courthouse are routinely advised that if you're going to be here beyond an hour, utilize that long-term parking facility. When Alderman Stoyer first identified that he was going to bring a communication forward, I talked to him about it, and he thanked me for giving him the information, but said there was a request, so he wanted to bring it forward and have the committee talk about it. So.
I mean, is
Alderman Johnson.
this a common occurrence, or are we trying to manage an exception here?
In my opinion, I think we're talking about an exception. I have heard about one, maybe, this one came up, this individual wanted to contest the ticket, but it was a properly issued ticket. The meter was expired, so there was no error in why the ticket was, the citation was issued. So the individual was advised, because it was not an improperly written ticket. It would have to be contested down at Muni Court, and the individual didn't want to go down to Muni Court to contest, so they paid it. Well, by paying the ticket, that's a de facto admission of guilt. So you can't even contest at that point.
So does the county have a couple stalls that they can just designate for?
They do not. They would be
Witnesses?
asking the city, the parking utility, to give up our stalls.
Does the clerk's office communicate with witnesses, I presume, when,
That is my understanding.
so they could, in theory, put in their communication, long-term parking is available in the city parking ramp?
Based off of what Mr. Purlott identified in his email back to the clerk of courts, it's my belief that they routinely do that already. This person who was testifying simply chose a more convenient location because he thought he was going to be in and out. Not only was he not in and out as quickly as he thought, but the case before his delayed the proceedings by almost an hour. So he was in the courthouse longer than he anticipated. Oftentimes, from what I've been told, oftentimes a bailiff or somebody within the courthouse will go out and replug the meters, which technically is a violation of the 2-hour parking zone in the first place. But this individual couldn't run out and plug the meter because they were either on the stand or queued up to go on the stand and may have missed that call to go up and testify while they were out plugging the meter.
So how heavily are those meters over there utilized, and would there be an option to release a couple of them to the county for a fee that they could then designate for witnesses?
I think the option is there. They are very heavily utilized meters. We would be charging the maximum daily rate on the meter, so it would not be a loss in revenue to the city. Again, the biggest problem that we would have is for us to be able to determine whether or not the person utilizing the stall is indeed authorized to do so. That would almost require that the county would have to issue some sort of a hang tag or a voucher or some way of communicating that that's the vehicle that deserves to be using that spot at the time.
Well, that's kind of my point. I don't know that I think the city should necessarily get involved in managing a parking need for the county. I mean, the county, I think, needs to manage it, but if there's a way for us to give the county an option, and that option being, hey, county, if you want to lease these stalls from us, here's the rate, but you need to manage who's parking in your stalls.
And that, I think, is about the only other option that we would have, is they would have to pay the $10 daily fee for each of the meters that they want. And then they would be responsible for policing it as well.
Okay, thank you.
What are the wishes of the committee?
I just move to receive and place on file and just ask staff to maybe make some type of offer to the county if,
We can do that.
and, I think you guys can just handle that without it having to come back to committee.
Sure.
Motion to receive and place on file and
Second.
referring it to staff to negotiate whatever they can accomplish. Second by Weary under discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes, motion carried. Okay, to consideration of possible action and request by Alderman Weary to future repairs, upgrade Shawano Ave from Ashland to Oneida. Weary?
Thanks for holding this one up. You asked about the street a lot. I know it's in some rough shape. I'm just wondering if we kind of know, I know the state's involved, Rob was shut out.
Yep.
Do we
Okay,
have
I just
any-
had a conversation again yesterday. I had one about a year ago
about right.
with the DOT. So I talked to Dan Segerstrom, who is the project development supervisor for Brown County. And this is a connecting highway. So major reconstruction or program cycle type events are covered primarily by state and federal funding. But maintenance activities would be a city function, so pothole patching becomes a city function. Did discuss this with Dan yesterday, and he confirmed the conversation we had last year. And that conversation is that this stretch is not in the DOT's 6-year plan right now. If the city were to request, they could start evaluation to determine whether or not they want to include it in the 6-year plan. At this point, the way that the state's programming cycle works, their life cycle cost analysis for a pavement, they would likely be looking at doing something very similar to what they did back in 2005, which was an asphalt overlay of the concrete street. And what we see now is that asphalt is delaminating from the underlying concrete. So when it gets hit, it peels up in large chunks as opposed to crumbling. Good possibility that that could happen again. Dan did talk to me about some new treatments they have that help eliminate some of that delaminating that we're seeing now. Dan also did share with me that he's not sure exactly what the program looked like back in '05 when that project was constructed, or in 2004 when it was approved, but that type of a project would never be approved by DOT for construction again. They simply don't want to put those thin asphalt lifts on top of concrete, because Dan remembered the project, at the joints, the concrete pavement underneath, the joints are failing, which is causing the raveling that travels up, and then we start with the issues that we're seeing. The fact that we got a good 10 to 12 years out of it in the first place is actually rather surprising. So if there's a silver lining, that's it. The other thing that I did discuss with Dan was, when we look at a street improvement project, we also take a look at the underlying utilities. And my belief is the utilities out there are probably in need of significant repair. The water main is probably of a vintage that it needs replacement. So when we did the Velp Avenue project, Velp went straight from original pavement to reconstruct, which is an oddity with the DOT. But the reason that it was considered for a full reconstruct right away was because of when we had to replace the utilities, we would have destroyed so much of the pavement that there was nothing left to rehab. And that very likely could be the case out here as well. So what we would do is we would get together with our staff, take a look at the sanitary and storm sewers out there, and then we would coordinate with water utility to see what the age of their infrastructure was and what potential impacts would happen if we had to replace all of those underground utilities, and how that may also affect the project. We would then put all that data together, submit it to the DOT, and ask them to consider this for a future project. But even if they said, oh my God, yes, we're all over this one, we'd be looking 6 years out, and we're gonna have to limp this thing along the way that we have been with some pretty significant patching like we have the last 2 years.
Steve, do you recommend doing that route? At least try to...
At least it gets it on the DOT radar. Right now, it's not even on the radar.
Because my daughter goes to West, and get asked all the time about that street.
Yeah. There is an alternative. It's not a very palatable one. And the alternative is, and I did confirm this with Dan as well, because it's connecting highway, they will participate if it's on their schedule. If instead the city wanted to fully fund that reconstruction, they would authorize us to do so, provided we followed their design criteria, and they would thank us very kindly for our contribution.
Johnson?
Steve, you mentioned, and this just surprises me, that we're happy with the fact that we got 10 to 12 years out of it, but we're not even on their 6-year radar.
Correct.
I mean, that's shocking. So my question is, when we have these highways that run through the city that need repair, I mean, what's the process that the state uses for determining how these roads get on their radar?
It has changed quite a bit over even over the last 10 years. And that's why I say, back in 2004, 2005, when this project was originally scoped, the way their life cycle analysis was structured was they were looking to get 35 years out of a concrete pavement, somewhere between 35 and 40 years. Then they would assume that it would be milled and get an asphalt overlay, and that would last 10 to 12 years. Then you would do another asphalt overlay that would last another 10 to 12 years, and then you'd be due up for a reconstruct. They have sort of changed some of those now. The mid-2000 to 2010 range, heading up towards the higher end of that decade. They were looking more at ride quality, and that's when they first started introducing some of the treatments to getting on pavements earlier to extend their life. And the way Dan described it to me yesterday, he said now they're trying to squeeze every day of life that they can out of these things. So they are getting a project accelerated is very, very difficult.
I know, and I've seen some media, and you may not have a real capable, I guess, response to this question, but I've seen in the media recently that Tony Evers has proposed reducing the funding on major interstate projects and instead redirecting that more towards local projects. Based on that, his proposal there, would that affect projects like this, and could we potentially see more funding depending on what the state legislature does?
It may, depending on how they define local projects.
Okay.
Again, because the way we've sort of taken a look at it, majors are interstate projects, widening or expansion, capacity enhancement type projects. So the Highway 15 project in Outagamie County that's been on the shelf for God knows how long. The zoo interchange down in Milwaukee. Those types of projects are what we normally consider to be majors. In our parlance, local projects are Gray Street and Mather, okay? This is a principal arterial on a connecting highway that's kind of in the middle, so we really don't know how that would fall under the governor's definition of a local or a major.
Okay.
So we're waiting to see what that definition is as well.
Thank you.
Alderman Weary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's worth doing the studying on the utilities and see if we can at least light a little fire under it. It doesn't hurt, right? I mean, otherwise it's not even on the radar, like you said.
Absolutely. So,
Either way, we have to limp it along, but we might as well.
right. I guess what our recommendation to the committee was going to be is to direct staff to get this into, at least get the paperwork over to the DOT to try to get it included in their program, and then continue with maintenance activities to the best of our ability.
That'd be my motion.
Second?
Okay, motion by Weary to that effect, and second by Johnson, our discussion. Hear none, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried. 3, consideration of possible action request by Alderman Weary that the city take ownership and/or maintenance of the drainage ponds serving Hannah Street. Alderman Weary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And maybe this one will be resolved. In the past, it seems like we've had issues with a lot of overgrown weeds, and then we have to go out and cut it. Is there an owner of that who's been doing the work that we know of? It seems like they've disappeared, and we end up doing the work all the time anyway.
There was supposed to have been a homeowners association
Yeah.
that was formed, and apparently that has dissolved.
So what do we do in those cases then? Because we do the work anyway, right? Nobody else is there to
Well,
do it.
no, actually, we don't. It would be cut for nuisance,
Yeah. But
like
who
long grass and
do you
weed.
bill?
The property owner there's actually easements on 2 properties,
Okay.
so it would be those 2 property owners who'd wind up getting billed
People who
for
are
it.
next to it?
Yeah,
Wow.
they're actually, if you look, we've included in the packet,
Yeah.
we've included a diagram, and you can see that it's actually, there's an easement, but it's on each of these 2 properties, so they're the property owners. And I don't know if you, I did kind of give a little overview.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were able to see that. When this subdivision was planned, our staff recommended against doing what they did, because this was kind of a cheap way out, and we knew that it was likely not going to be successful. So we really strongly advocated for them not to do this, but the developer at the time wanted to get it in, and oh no, we'll make sure that, the homeowners association, there's gonna be deed restrictions filed and all this kind of fun stuff. So those things do appear on the plat. I did review the plat up at our office, so, all the language is there. But when the houses were built, there's supposed to be backyard drainage ditches to direct water down to these ponds. When the houses were built, they simply filled the ditch in, so there's no way to convey the water down here in the first place.
So it's a
Then-
collector pond with nothing feeding to it?
They're not working very well at all.
Okay.
Where's the pond?
It's right here.
That's the
There's
pond.
one there too, but.
Oh, okay. It looked dry.
Yeah, I remember when this went in and there was
Well, if
discussion
memory
about that.
serves, I believe this was Creative Custom Homes that did the
Yep,
subdivision.
yep.
So
John, somebody earlier.
there were several issues with that particular developer all around the area.
So the properties next to it, they don't own this property, right?
No, they do.
Oh,
Yeah,
so this
They
is
actually
part,
own the parcel,
okay.
and then the HOA was supposed to fund the work.
Does it have to be a drainage pond then, if there's nothing draining to it? I mean, is that,
Well,
I'm sure
technically,
they'll ask
according to the DNR, there has to be a stormwater management
uh-huh.
system out there for the subdivision.
Is this one? Since nothing's,
The way that they're designed actually is, I believe, the one on the west side of the road is a dry pond, and it discharges over to the closer to the railroad corridor, and that's an infiltration basin. So it's not like the one on the west side, it's not like a conventional pond, it fills up and then is designed to infiltrate back into the groundwater.
have these homeowners been in contact with your office at all?
To the
Do you
best of
know
my
what-
knowledge, I don't think so, at least not recently.
Yeah, I tried to explain it to them that the best I can, but it's pretty much their property to maintain.
Yeah, and if, you know, I did have a conversation with Matt Heckenleibel, who oversees the utilities. Matt reminded me that the city didn't want it back when the subdivision was put in, the city doesn't want it now. Because it doesn't function, we would not be able to realize any of the MS4 credits, which is the whole reason that the stormwater utility exists, was because of the MS4 permit. So we would incur expense without getting any benefit. We would not be any closer to compliance with our MS4 permit by taking the stormwater system over. What we would likely wind up doing is going back to the original design, and we would have to invest significant amount of money. We would actually go, we would cut the ditches back in, we're gonna go through people's backyards, if they've got sheds or fences or what have you, it's all coming down because the system, we would restore the system back to its original design, and judging by your reaction, I think you understand where we're a little hesitant to do that.
What do you want to do, Chris?
I haven't heard of any flooding complaints, so
Correct.
it's not like there's been a lot of water standing that isn't going anywhere. So, since it's not being really, it's not serving its purpose, if it were to shrink in size.
We can't advocate that.
No, not advocating, but
And
if it did,
If, I can tell you that a lot of our facilities have been subject to increased scrutiny from DNR since we had the notice of violation. If DNR goes out there and notices that there's an issue, they could come back against the property owners. So I'd be
the whole
very.
neighborhood.
Well, and the facilities are on the two properties, so it's extremely unfortunate for the people who bought those two lots. I agree with you 100%.
Okay, and they're stuck in between, they're maintaining a.
Rock and a hard place, yes, they are.
That's something the whole neighborhood was supposed to, and they were guaranteed this neighborhood association was gonna pay for it, and then they disappeared.
Yep.
Now they're left maintaining something that isn't really working. Okay. So,
Receive and place on file?
yeah.
You gonna take care
unless
of it
you're
in
I have a
internally.
quick question.
Oh, Alderman Johnson.
How many of these do we have like this throughout the city, Steve?
Hopefully not many.
I don't think there are many. This may be one of one, for all I know.
And the reason, I mean, I mean, I can empathize with the homeowners here, and
Yeah.
of course, you oftentimes, I mean, they would have been part of the association, I presume.
Correct.
That voted to dissolve, and they had a vote there. But my question is more so when you have a property owner who maybe isn't fully aware of the consequences that could occur by allowing this type of easement. And this might be a little over the top, and why I asked how many of these we have, you know, if there's some type of exit strategy or, you know, dissolution strategy, right, when these things expire, that, hey, before you can do that, these, you know, things need to be met. Of course, the easy thing is property owner, take care of it, no issue. But in situations where it's not that easy,
Several of the other facilities, and the infiltration bases complicate things even more, as opposed to a conventional pond. Because generally speaking, the infiltration basins, it looks and acts more like your lawn than a pond does, whereas a pond has a very distinct appearance, okay? Generally speaking, the ponds wind up on separate parcels. They don't wind up as an encumbrance on a parent parcel, a residential parcel. Most of the residential subdivisions that have stormwater management associated with them, that's particular to the subdivision itself, we did have language written into the developer's agreement that if you build the facility up to city standards and you get it to a point where it's functional, it's demonstrating that it's working the way that it has been, you have the ability to petition the city to take it over. Because we knew that this one very likely was not going to function the way somebody intended, we didn't have that language in the subdivision plat.
Would there be a process to not require this, or I mean, how would they even go about doing that? If the homeowner would appeal to the state, to us, to,
Well, I think that's kind of what they've done with the communication,
Yeah.
is they're trying to make an appeal.
see what the options are?
And unfortunately, I think the only options are status quo,
Okay,
or if the city were to take it over, that we would very likely,
oh, yeah.
Be ripping
I think
through
that's
people's
not a
backyards.
suggestion or a
Right.
request. All right, I think for now, this is,
and
Good
just
information.
for edification though, how do we prevent this in the future?
yeah.
That's why we have the requirements that we do in the developers' agreements. If it's and we have 3 different ways of building subdivisions. I think we may have gone over this, we may not have in the past. Option 1 is a traditional subdivision where a developer comes in, has an idea, so they come in with a preliminary plat. We sit down, look at the plat, identify where stormwater management's gonna go and that kind of good stuff. They plat out the lots, send it in to us, the plat gets recorded, then city staff designs the infrastructure that goes along with that. We bid, we build. Option 3, if we're gonna go out of order, option 3 is the developer build, where the developer designs and builds everything. It's all subject, we do the reviews all the way through, we inspect it during construction. When they're done, they dedicate the improvements over to the city. The benefits of that, there were no assessments, because they funded it entirely on their own. They did not have to follow public bidding statutes. So if they had a relationship with a contractor where they could get work done at a better price than we could do it, that was on them, because they were funding the whole thing. And timing was a big thing, because our bidding process has some inherent time delays to it. And whereas they didn't have to bid it out, they could turn around literally 2 days after they got the signed plans back from the city saying, we approve of your plan, they could be under construction. Back when this 3-option development came through, the city was still obligated to prevailing wage statutes in the state of Wisconsin. Now, those have gone away. Because we had to pay prevailing wage and the contractor, the developer did not, sometimes we were able to do it cheaper as well. The option 2 is a hybrid between 1 and 3, which is why I did them the way I did. The developer designs everything, then takes the biddable plans and turns them over to the city, and we let the contract and build it. So there's the 3 ways of doing that. With all 3 of the options, we are involved and we require that stormwater management be approved by the city before you're allowed to proceed with any construction. Matter of fact, the stormwater management system has to be constructed before you start doing the residential subdivision. So that's the safeguards we've put in learning our lessons.
Yeah, I believe it comes back now, I think it was John Shaleen and his group who did this with the name that you had mentioned, the business.
Yeah.
They guaranteed there would be a.
Creative Custom, I think that was
Yeah.
Gary Wyman
Okay,
and
okay. Yeah.
that group.
They set up the group and they disappeared and kind of left all the homeowners in a lurch and they
Right.
didn't know what to do, so.
Well,
We had
and-
people on the far end who were wondering why they were paying for something, their water wasn't gonna flow anywhere near this, right?
Yeah, sometimes we've run into instances with developers, with real estate agents, where it's not, there's no ill intent,
Yeah.
but just information isn't communicated. And then, you know, you wind up, we've got a subdivision out on the far east side, Eaton Heights, the first edition, the original Eaton Heights and Eaton Heights First Edition, where the plat required the sidewalks to be installed before a certificate of occupancy was granted. The developer built the house, didn't put the sidewalk in, sold the house, people moved in 2 years after the fact, we found out, and now they're on the hook for putting the sidewalk in, and they're not real happy about it. That happened like 2 years ago. So, I mean, things like this have happened in the past, and anytime that we run into a situation, that gives us the opportunity to work, you know, either within our own department or working with other departments to try to close those holes up so it doesn't happen in the future.
And hopefully this will be a good lesson, and I'll communicate to them their options.
Motion received and placed on file?
Yeah.
By Worry, second by Johnson. Our discussion, here none, all in favor. Nays,
Aye.
motion carried. Okay, 4, consideration of possible action in Department of Public Works Capital Improvement Program 2019. Director Ganere.
We have handed out to you a copy of the 2019 draft capital improvements program. This should be the bulk of our meeting tonight, so we're going to walk you through it. First page is subdivisions, so new subdivisions on the east side. You'll note after Bradley Estates, there's a number 3 in parentheses. What we tried to do is identify the type of subdivision that, so the last conversation was actually kind of timely. Bradley Estates and Sitka Heights are both developer build. Those are carryover projects from last year. Those are, Bradley Estates will be on the south side of Ontario Road, or south side of Sitka Street, just west of Ontario. So if you're familiar with where Crystal McAuliffe Park is, Dan Schmidt lives immediately to the west of Sitka, of Crystal McAuliffe Park. This would be due south of Dan's house. And Sitka Heights would be immediately to the west of Dan's house on the north side. Eaton Heights Second Edition is out north of Humboldt Road, west of Spartan. Grandview Place, Alder Johnson, you may not be as familiar with that one as Alders Nicholson and Weary are, but that was the bunker out by the Woods Golf Course. So what we're looking at doing is extending the sewer across and getting the first phase. That's Oak Park Place, is that multifamily that went in there a couple of years ago. They're looking at getting some apartments and townhouses in to start that subdivision. And then Excalibur Phase 3 is the finalization of Paula Street out to Sussex.
About halfway out.
Okay. Out in the Red Smith area. So subdivisions don't have a city, typically have a city cost to them. Where you see on the, because Eaton Heights is a traditional subdivision, the way that we would assess is based on the assessment numbers that we adopted at the last meeting. Those assessments for sanitary are based on an 8-inch sanitary, and storm sewer is based on a 12-inch storm sewer. As you start adding properties together, the pipe has to get larger because you're taking more and more flow. So we would assess the storm sewer given a number, and then the difference between the actual cost of construction and what we assess becomes a city cost. We pay that upcharge for the larger pipe. Whereas if you're doing a developer build, because you're probably not, the contractor is at a better price than what we're bidding out, you just assume all those costs and we don't pay the upcharge. The developer does. So there are a couple of locations here where we do have some city costs on sanitary and or storm, but that's typically not seen on subdivisions. Then we have the build out on Pine Acre Estates on the west side. Going to the second page, now we start getting into the meat of our program, the DPW program. So South Chestnut Avenue, between East Mason and the cul-de-sac south. That cul-de-sac south is, was formerly Sixth Street. So Alders Nicholson and Weary may remember when we vacated the Sixth Street right-of-way in about 2008, and Habitat for Humanity put homes in on both South Maple and South Chestnut. We built cul-de-sacs down there. We're going from that cul-de-sac back up to Mason Street here. Then the second project takes it between Howard and Arndt Street. Springdale Lane, that is off of 9th West Point. It goes up into the Lillian Boucher property. Parks Department has a small park over there, and the intent there is to get public access to the Boucher property, and then she can build her own streets, or plat her own streets within her property, but we do need to get municipal access onto that property so she can develop. We now go to North Webster Avenue. This is the section between Main Street and the East River. Again, we're doing the project from the East River up to Radisson as part of a DOT contract. This piece is just a little stub about 1.5 blocks long that needs to be filled in. And we're gonna do that during the final phases of the major project. Go ahead and get this taken care of. So from Main Street all the way up to I-43, we're gonna be brand new, and we won't have to come back here for 40, 50 years. That is going to require the reconstruction of storm sewer, sanitary, and water main as well. So it would be a full reconstruct. Edgewood and Harvest, there's a small piece of Edgewood Lane over on the city's east side that the right-of-way has been platted. This is in District 2, and there's 700 feet, 410 feet, I guess, okay? That's a gap. So the road comes up, it's supposed to be sort of a U-shaped drive, and it comes up, makes the curve, and then just dead ends. Same thing comes up and dead ends, so there's a gap in the middle that has a cul-de-sac on it, which is Harvest Court. Property owner approached us about a year or so ago, said she wanted to subdivide the property and sell the lots off, and in order to do that, we gotta get this road in. Page 3, we go to the National Highway System routes, and that's where we find our North Webster Wisnot project. Pavement and storm sewer are part of the project this year. We did the water main and sanitary last year. We don't have any NHS routes. On the west side, STP, that's a Surface Transportation Program. That's the Sitka Street, so I was talking about the two subdivisions near Crystal McCullough Park. This is the street that runs between them. In order to get the utilities out to the subdivisions, we have to reconstruct the streets because there's no utilities there right now. We're also moving forward with Gray Street. Last meeting, we brought forward the design contract for Gray. So we're anticipating going forward with this will finish off that design contract. Page 4, we get into primarily our other projects. So we start off with the West Mason Street traffic signal replacement, the LED signal lamp replacement. That's the two projects that we talked to you about with the equipment purchase last week, the 90/10 cost share from DOT for the traffic safety improvement projects that are going on the west side this summer. So you see the total cost is $1.1 million for each of those two projects, but the city outlay is $110,000, only 10% of the total project cost. Rail crossing repairs, we have, I believe, 3 rail crossings that were total of 5. There's 3 of them that are in Canadian National's program for this year. Elizabeth, south of University, Irwin at Eastman, and 9th at Ashland. So they have those in there. What we've also noticed is with the Webster Avenue construction project that started, the utility project that started last year, and then the pavement that's going to go this year. We've got traffic detouring up Quincy to Radisson, and a lot of traffic is self-diverting Quincy at Klaus. And those 2 rail crossings have just been almost obliterated. As a matter of fact, Alder LaFave stopped to see me again today. She said that at Quincy, Radisson at Quincy, the pavement in between the rails is gone. It's down, so you drop down in between the rails. So we've been hounding CN to get out there and get that patched up. But both of those crossings have been beat because of the heavy truck traffic, so those are gonna need to be replaced this year. Get into bridge repairs, so we have 45,000 in general bridge maintenance. We've got over 30 bridges here in the city, and there's little things here and there that need to be taken care of at each one of them. Wiesner Street, that pedestrian bridge, has been identified for probably the last 3 years as being in need of significant repair, so we've got $200,000 going into there. We've got a design contract for the West Mason Street at Beaver Dam Creek, that's at the bottom of Fireman's Hill. So that's to hire a design consultant. Main Street Bridge at Fox River, we have bid that project out, and we've been having some problems getting folks to bid on it. The hydraulic system that operates the lift bridge needs to, without getting too complicated, there's motors that drive pumps, and the pumps drive something else, and it's all connected with hydraulic fluid. Basically, the control modules and the control modules, the pumps, and the hydraulic motors that operate that bridge have reached the end of the useful service life. So we have to replace all of that stuff, and the downside is if we don't, we have a failure, we wind up with a bridge that's either stuck open or stuck closed for months on end because we can't even get the parts to repair these things anymore. That was the first option we looked at, was rehab or augmentation, and the parts for our 1998 vintage hydraulic motors and pumps don't exist any longer. Let's see here. We're also going to be doing some inspection or design for the Mason Street over the East River Bridge on the east side here, to take a look at designing a deck overlay. Required annual inspections. There are some bridges that need to be inspected annually as opposed to biannually. And $25,000 to design a new structure for Taylor Street over Beaver Dam Creek. That is in near proximity to,
Home Depot,
I'm trying to think of,
Pioneer, or
The-
Capital Credit Union.
no, the elementary school.
No, you're thinking south, this is north.
Okay. Oh, so this is, okay, this is the one that's that has the structural deficiency in it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought we were down on,
No, this is the north one.
okay. My mistake. So this would be up closer, just north of Home Depot where Larson Road cuts off to the west. There's a bridge that's been identified up there as having some, I think we had the load posted, right? Load
I
limit?
believe so. Yeah.
So we're doing some design there. Our annual projects, asphalt resurfacing, that's our annual blacktop residential street program. There's also, when we do that resurfacing program, when we let the contract, there's a part A and a part B. The part B is the actual asphalt. The part A is curb and gutter work and associated pavement repairs that need to be done before we can do the resurfacing. So that's why you see the pavement repairs for the resurfacing program is a separate line item. They're two different contracts. Then we also have $60,000 in there for pavement repairs, asphalt patching. I always struggle to find a couple of examples that everybody knows, so I tend to pick one on the east side, one on the west side. West side bond between Military and Taylor. There's some real long stretches out there by Helen Keller that have longer asphalt patches on them. East side, Superior Road. As you come up from Baird Creek up towards Sitka Street, running parallel with I-43, there were some frost heaves in there, so there's like 80-foot long patches that are 1 lane wide. That we wouldn't, that's not a resurfacing street, but it's bigger than what our crews can handle, so we use our resurfacing contractor to do some of these longer pavement patches on a street that wouldn't otherwise be ready for a resurfacing or reconstruct. So we just account for that separately within our bonding. Concrete pavement repairs citywide, that's, as the name implies, if we've got concrete panels that have failed, chipped, broken, settled, what have you. That's just routine maintenance work that happens across the city. Mudjacking can be anything from, more often than not, we use that on curb and gutter on our resurfacing streets. We try to mudjack the curb and get it to drain properly before ripping it out and replacing it, because it's about 1/4 the cost. So we've got about $30,000. That number is based on historical averages. And then with the sidewalk replacement, some of that contract is on city sidewalks, so things that are in front of municipal buildings, city parks, or curb ramps, which would not get assessed back to adjacent property owners. Page 5 is our sewers section. So we, about 6-7 years ago, we started, in the city core, we started expanding out, doing basin televising. And by doing that, getting a look inside of the pipe, we can get a better evaluation of what condition that pipe is in, whether it needs to be cleaned, whether it needs to be rehabilitated or maintained, things like that. So we do hire a contractor, and Matt has identified 8 basins for sanitary televising. This has definitely helped. We've been recognized by EPA for implementing this program, because we went from an 11 or 12-year rotation of inspecting our sewers to about a 6-year rotation. So we're definitely getting our bang for the buck. Plus, with that program, that basin televising, down below, the last item in this page is chronic sewer repairs citywide. That's repair projects that we found from the basin televising. So it's definitely eliminated backups. When we do our annual recap of sanitary issues, and you've seen those sanitary backup calls continuing to decrease, those 2 items are largely a major contributing factor to that. As a Radisson Street sanitary sewer, this would be in front of between Green Bay Packaging and Feral Gas, so this the same location as the railroad crossing I was just talking about. We lined that sewer a couple of years ago, and shortly after we put the liner in, there was a water main break. The water pressure underneath actually caused the liner in the flow line of the pipe, the worst possible location where the water should be flowing. It caused a pillow to form, and then the liner cured out like that. So it actually created a blockage in the sewer. Now, along the edges of the pipe, where that comes back down, the only 2 places that are on that line are Green Bay Packaging's container division and the corporate offices. And there's enough capacity in that pipe that neither one of them has suffered any problem, but it's not an advisable situation. This does constitute a blockage, and over time, it's going to be a problem. So we've been working at it for about 3 months, trying to cut that blockage out of there, so we can get a new liner in there. And we've exhausted everything. We even invented a couple of things over in the east side shop for our cutter, trying to make it work a little bit better, and it's simply not working. The only thing we really can do, we're going to wind up having to dig down there and replace that section, being that it's on a extremely busy street, and that street is a detour during the Webster Avenue construction. It's going to get expensive, and the reason you see the price tag is because the piece that's still blocked is directly under the railroad tracks. So the coordination and the cost implications that go along with dealing with Canadian National is what's causing the issue there. Niagara Trail.
That's the one on 54.
Oh, okay. Every time I see it, I forget where that is. The University Heights Business Park, that expansion area off of 54, near the town of Scott. When you peel off onto 54, heading out to Luxembourg, immediately after getting onto 54, on the north side of the road, there's a mobile station that's been empty for many, many years now. That drained into a force main that flowed into the town of Scott, and then eventually came back around into city pipes. And we've got this arrangement with neighboring municipalities in a lot of different cases. where one of our residents drains into there, we pay them, they pay GBMSD kind of thing. So that's how this arrangement was, and it wasn't a big problem until last year when the town of Scott abandoned that force main. They don't need it any longer, and we're the only ones left draining into it. So because the station is empty right now, it's not hurting anybody, but the station can't be developed or redeveloped or occupied or anything else until it got sewer service. We need to provide sewer service back to that station. And the East Mason siphon elimination. Got a couple of locations around town, East Mason Street near John. East Mason Street at the East River is one of them, where we have what are referred to as inverted siphons. So they go down under the river, and based on their design, that siphon actually sucks the wastewater through. In order to make the siphon work properly, you actually have to neck the pipe down to increase the suction pressure, and a lot of hydraulic engineering goes into it. But because of that, they are prone to blockages. So we've had backups in the East Mason Street siphon, we've had blockages in the Grove Street siphon in the past. We're looking to eliminate those siphons. It's an old design technology, and with advancement in conveniences for living, some of these things are liabilities rather than assets like they used to be. One of the big things that we're seeing, and we're not alone, everybody in the world's dealing with it, is wipes, personal care wipes. Box says flushable. What flushable means is that it will pass through your toilet. Doesn't mean it's a decomposable wipe, and what they do is they wind up clogging on something, and a siphon is a good place for them, and causing backups and a lot of problems. You really want to make yourself ill looking at something that's morbidly fascinating. Just type in Fogberg. Fog is fat, oil, grease. So a Fogberg, and there are videos of Fogbergs that have developed. London is notorious for them. London, England, they took one out that was 21 tons of fat, oil, grease, baby wipes, that kind of stuff. Just this big greasy log of gunk that plugged up a like an 84-inch sewer or something like that. Pretty disturbing. Quincy
Your
Street.
YouTube habits seem disturbing to me, Steve.
What's that?
Your YouTube habits seem disturbing to me.
It's,
That's
when
what
you
you're
work in
looking
this,
up for
when
fun.
you work in this industry, it's amazing the kind of things that you will do with your free time. Quincy Street Lift Station, that's up direct, it's kind of right under I-43 on Quincy Street. One of our, I think it's our biggest lift station. The flap gate on the discharge, it's intended to stop the river water from backing up and causing the pumps to cycle backwards. Flap gate has been in since the station was originally built, past its useful life, needs to be repaired, so we've got a project in there for that. We started on dike inspections last year, the dike that runs out along the bay. This year, we're starting on maintenance, so we got the first $50,000 plugged in there, and we're gonna start with tree and brush elimination and that kind of stuff. So the dike didn't get into the shape that it's in right now overnight. We're not gonna be able to repair it overnight, but here we're gonna start picking away at the stone.
The entire length of it.
We're gonna take off and see how far we can get with the $50,000.
Is that from roughly GB all the way to?
I don't know if the dike goes all the way out there.
Okay,
It may terminate short of GB.
Just shy of
Okay.
it, I think, yeah.
I want to say that it stops, it peters out kind of by where East Shore connects to Nicolay,
okay.
maybe a little further out.
So any trees growing in the dike are gonna be taken out?
Yeah.
The roots probably tear it up.
Well, and
Erode it.
the hope is that if we take the tree down, then just allow the root mass to decompose, that we won't cause as much damage to the dike, and it'll be able to sort of heal itself a little bit. Howard Street, Pearl to Broadway.
And that was,
Breakthrough
there's
field.
no cost in that one, that's
Okay.
included it down below into Basin 108, or
Oh, okay. We originally had that listed out as a,
Yep.
my apologies on that. We originally had that listed out as a separate project. That's actually part of the Basin 110, 108, and Basin 106 stormwater project that's listed further down on here.
Yep.
Dan's Farland Storm Sewer upsizing. We started up in the northern part of the old Preble with a lot, over the past couple of years, we've done Elizabeth Street, I think we did one on Farland,
Yep.
a couple of the locations up there where we're upsizing storm sewer to alleviate flooding conditions not associated with a reconstruct or resurfacing. So this is another one of those that's on the list for this year. Sitka Street Stormwater Facility, it's a carryover project from last year that goes along with the Sitka Avenue reconstruction and the two subdivisions that we talked about at the beginning. Stormwater Facility Vegetative Maintenance, that's an annual contract that we do. See, I've got that still listed as 2018, it should be 2019. Street sweeper dewatering basins. When we run the street sweepers out, they come back and there's a mixture of liquid and solid that we've swept up off the street. We have to dewater that, bring the decanted water up to Green Bay Metropolitan Sewage District for discharge and treatment there. And then the dried solids we can actually bring to a landfill. It is considered to be a solid waste because of the contaminants that are picked up in there. We really haven't had a good way of dewatering that stuff. So what we're looking at doing is, Matt Heckenleb was just down at a conference, and it's essentially like a 20-yard roll-off box. It's got a liner in it. So we can start taking care of that and managing that waste the way it should be managed. Grandview Stormwater Facility, we did talk about the Grandview subdivision. This is the stormwater facility that goes along with that. It's about $1.5 million, but if you look, there's no city cost, that's a developer cost. Basins 110 and 108 and Basin 106. That's the lift station improvements that are going in on South Broadway. One is up Broadway at Howard, or up in that general vicinity. Howard and Pearl. And then the other one is down,
Clinton extended.
yeah, pretty much at where the shipyard is going in. Again, this is all known flooding issues primarily associated with the old slough that goes up as far as West High School. So everything up in that, between Shipyard and West High, that we have the high water conditions, that's what these two, and these were the two lift stations that were identified for the stadium district tax money. So that's where that last bit of stadium district tax money, that's where it's being spent, is on these two. We've actually, when you folks authorized us to go ahead and order the stormwater pumps for the lift stations a couple of meetings ago, that's where the money came from. That was out of stadium district money. Then we have sewer repairs citywide. That's just, we get a phone call from somebody saying there's a problem, we go investigate, and there's a problem with the sewer, we have to have a contractor come in and take care of it right away. That's what that program is. TV inspection of sewers for 2019. We talked about the basin televising earlier. The TV inspection of sewers line item is actually the streets that are going to be in the 2020 program. So we go out and we do the televising on there to determine what type of sewer work is needed for next year's program. Sewer rehabilitation for the resurfacing program. This is the sewer contract that goes along with the with the resurfacing program. We're just tracking the sewers separately from the pavement. Mini storm citywide, I think folks are real familiar with that. Root treatment citywide, we do have a contractor that we hire every year. It's a chemical root treatment process that they inject the chemical down into the sewer lines to kill the roots as an alternative to going in and cutting them mechanically. If we can use the chemical root treatment, it's a better option because it's longer lasting. And again, I did talk to you about the chronic sewer repairs citywide, how that tied into the basin televising. Page 6 is our TIF program. Erie Road, we did a project on Erie last summer to get us down and provide service to Nature's Way as part of the developer's agreement with Nature's Way. It did obligate us to go all the way down to the South City limits. That will open up an additional 200 or so acres for development, the I-43 Industrial Park. So we're gonna go ahead and get that taken care of. We do have money shown in here for the Grandview East Side Interceptor, and as I alluded to earlier with that Grandview subdivision, this interceptor will cross through that Grandview Place development and get over to Northview, Grandview Road, then come south on Grandview Road, at least south of Mason Street. I can't remember.
South of Mason.
Okay. And what that will do is provide sewer service out to the east city limits from roughly about a quarter of a mile north of Finger Road, half-mile north of Finger Road, to about a quarter to a half mile south of Mason Street. So we'll have this whole big swath in there that's now sewer service, not necessarily a TIF, but the area is now open for development. It's currently farmland, and we can expand the business park if we got sewer service out there. Because it does directly impact the TIF, it is a TIF eligible expense. So infrastructure being funded by a TIF is always a good thing. Then in TIF 14, this is the infrastructure that is going to support both the Breakthrough Fuels project and the shipyard. So there's a reconstruct on, oh, I'm sorry, TIF 14 is rail yard, not shipyard. So this is going in to extend Kellogg Street between Broadway and Donald Driver, and then taking Donald Driver and Bond from its current northern terminus limits up to Bond and then back out to Broadway. So that's going to open up for the TWG development and the condos, townhouses, and then whatever's going interior. But again, getting that development in there. And that money was bonded, I think, the TIF bonding, I think, was 2 years ago, so we don't have to get new money for this. This is on, when we get to the last page, you'll see that there's $0 in TIF bonding here. And then TIF number 5, this is shipyard. This is all out of the bond request, that $2 million from last year, and this is going to reconstruct Arch Street, Bridge Street, Pearl Street. We've got Bridge and Pearl in there kind of as placeholders. Those aren't going to go until next year. We just want to make sure that folks are aware of that so that when you see it next year, not a surprise. And that we are thinking things through holistically in the area. Arch Street is going to go this year. That's being designed by a consultant. Then we get down to the nitty gritty, which is the last page, and that's how do we pay for all of this. About $8.4 million in pavement-related items. Fees and contingencies is another $1.5 million, so our total program is about $9.9 million. We receive about $115,000 in state aid for the local road improvement project that's dedicated to the resurfacing program. We're carrying over about $4.9 million. That's the carryover projects that you see with the stars. And then vehicle registration fees, that's when we talk about the wheel tax. You will note that we are at 1.5, and we originally had talked about 2.1. Since we enacted the vehicle registration fees, I have continued to stay in contact with other municipalities who have enacted a wheel tax. And what I'm hearing across the board is anticipate, whatever the number was that DOT gave you, anticipate 30% of that going away because you have people who are carrying a Green Bay address that live in Howard, Bellevue, Ashwaubenon. And they call in and they get that changed, and you don't get the money. It has to go back to them. I had a conversation with Finance Department, and we have been fielding those calls since October. And Diana said there are a lot of them. So she gave me some projections right now. We are currently on track. We've got 2 months worth of data in, but assuming that cars get sold relatively uniformly throughout the course of the year. We're on track. We're collecting about $110,000 a month in vehicle registration fees, which only nets out to about 1.3 million for the year. So it's a bigger hit than we thought. I think this is a little bit of an oddity. I think maybe more cars are sold in the summer, so the registration fees will come up a little bit over the summer. I would rather be wrong low than guess high and not have the money to pay for stuff at the end. So we're estimating this year at $1.5 million in vehicle registration fees. And once we get a year under our belt, I think we'll have some better data to work on for the future. So just for this year, I would like to stay with that 1.5 estimate. We did promise you that as part of the wheel we would provide you with a wheel tax summary, so that has also been provided to you. We were anticipating in the 700 to 750 range. I thought I brought it down. Apparently I didn't. That's okay. For assessments and based off of the streets that are in this year, what we otherwise would have assessed comes out to about 783, almost 783.5 in assessments. So that's being covered by, that was, from what I understand, that was the number one concern with the wheel tax, is eliminate those assessments and fund them out of here. So that tracks well with where we thought. Program expansion and reduction in borrowing, we had figured that somewhere around 450, I think, 425, 450. We're here at 496. We do have a much larger, more expensive program than we had, and this is money we otherwise would have to bond for. So that was definitely something that was in line with what we were expecting. This year, we do have some rail crossing upgrades that are in need of attention. I don't expect this to be at this level on an annual basis. The big thing that killed us there was the two crossings on Radisson, thanks, Radisson, Klaus, because of the detour traffic and those things getting beat up as badly as they did. Otherwise, we probably would have been down around 50,000 or something like that for rail crossing repairs. So this is where the $1.5 million in wheel tax money is going. Get into the storm sewers. We're at about almost $12.7 million in storm sewer projects this year. Again, contingencies, we are estimating at about $750,000, so it's about almost a $13.5 million project. We had $3.6 million in carryover funding. The stormwater utility as part of our budgeting process. We have some cap reserves, so we're utilizing about $1.5 million in capital reserves plus the $1.5 million that was in the budget, the stormwater budget that's being transferred over. The $750,000 we're showing is, that's the last of the stadium district tax money that was dedicated to those two lift stations, so we want to make sure that's accounted for here. Sanitary sewers, almost $4.1 million in programs, $650,000 in contingencies. So the program is about 4.7 in total. We're carrying over almost $1.1 million from last year. Again, you look for the asterisks, you'll see the carryover projects. As part of our sanitary sewer district budget, there is a line item in there that's capital, or transfer out to capital projects that we adopted at budget time. That's that $2 million, so we're going to have to bond about $1.6 million in sanitary. Parking ramp repairs, this is an annual project. This is what we do to make sure that we keep the parking ramps up and operational. It's about a $650,000 contract every year. DPW, we have some windows that need to be replaced over at the east side shop. We've got some asbestos tile that needs to be taken out and disposed of at the east side shop. We have a renovation at the west side shop for the men's shower room, and we have held off on doing tuck pointing at the west side shop for the last 5 years, and it's gotten to a point where we can't wait anymore. So we're looking at putting $100,000 in there for tuck pointing. Go to the center, and this is our summary. So we have about $3.4 million worth of need in pavement, $140,000 for the garage, $6 million in change for storm, almost a little over $1.6 million in sanitary, and $650,000 in parking ramp repairs. Again, as we told you, the 3 tips, that cash already exists, so we do not have to bond for it. Our total bond request this year is going to be about $11,854,000. None of that is TIF supported. $6 million is stormwater utility supported, so the storm pays its own. Sanitary, because they're a utility, they pay their own. And $4.2 million of that is going to be levy-supported debt. The $11 million bond request compares to the $8.48 million bond request last year and 12.5 in 2017. So, again, we are doing everything that we can to try to hold the line on bonding and be as frugal as we can, but still get the program to the level that the alders have asked us to get it to. So, a lot of information to drop on you guys tonight.
Questions or concerns? Alderman Johnson, worried next.
Just a couple here, Steve. You talked about replacement of the railroad crossings over off of Quincy, both at Radisson and Klaus.
Yes.
Because they've been damaged maybe a little bit more aggressively as a result of the detour. My question is, does it make more sense, and of course you're the engineer, I'm sure I already know the answer, but why wouldn't we patch those until that construction is done and reconstruct them when that traffic is less?
We anticipate that's going to happen, but we will have to order the materials this year to ensure that they're here in time for the construction. When in time to do the replacement over, we have to order the materials in 2019, so I have to have the cash on hand to order the materials. We will do the work after Webster is back open.
Okay. And of course, part of the reason I'm asking is, and I'm looking at, of course, the wheel tax revenue. Not only are we taking in less, but then of the amount that we have available, we're putting a big chunk towards railroad crossing. And I understand it needs to be done, but of course, I think the concern that I hear the most is roads. But, so that's why I asked the question. The other question I have is related to lights. And I know everything's a priority and comes up. Is there, what did I see, like $1 million are going towards repairing streetlights? Where did I see that?
The DOT project.
The DOT project?
Yeah, is that,
No, that's traffic signals.
and that's what I mean. Yeah, sorry. So
Okay.
is that, is the DOT funding
It
yet?
may help, when we're having discussions. To me, a traffic signal is the red, green, and yellow, and a light is a street light.
I'll remember that.
I've had to program myself, so I get confused quickly.
Yeah.
So traffic signal, yes.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I can't find the page that it's on right now, but how is that project being funded?
Page 3, 4. We applied for and were awarded 2 grants, highway safety improvement grants.
Okay, I see. So we're only accountable for 10% of the
$110,000
cost.
for each, yes.
Okay.
Overall project cost is about 1.1 million, it's a 90-10 cost share.
Okay, and of course, again, my direction was, can those wait a year? Can they wait 2 years? But, if we're only looking at a 10% cost, I understand now.
Yep.
The asphalting piece, and this, Alder Weir and Alder Nicholson may know the answer to this because they've been here before, but 1.3 million for asphalt resurfacing. When do you make the decision about which streets are going to be resurfaced?
Generally speaking, it's 2 to 3 years before the street's done.
Okay, so this money in this budget, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand that.
We put a program together about 2 to 3 years before we actually do the street. So if you were to, I can't do it for you immediately, but if you were to come into the office on Friday, we make an appointment and you say, Steve, I'd like to talk to you about the streets you're planning on doing in 2021, we'd be able to provide you with the list of streets we're going to be doing in 2021.
I'll be there. Okay,
So
and
2 to 3 years out is when we're planning these streets. We used to do a postcard survey, and that was 3 years ahead of them.
I remember that,
Okay?
yeah.
We don't actually do the survey, but we're still picking the streets in
Okay.
advance.
And I can do a one-on-one meeting with you to have that conversation. So one thing that, I've heard tossed around a little bit, particularly during the campaign cycle here, is that we used to do 3% of the roads, now we only do 1%.
In the last 30 years, we have never done 3% of the roads.
Okay,
3% is an arbitrary number that was picked because it's twice the 1.5 that we're currently doing.
So, I mean, percentage of roads, I mean, is that even a metric that you use to talk about progress on roads? And I think ultimately what I'm getting at here is the question that everybody wants answered, and that is, what's it gonna take for us to get the condition of our streets up to an acceptable level?
The answer is not a very popular one. It's gonna take 4 more engineers. And 4 more engineers is about between $550,000 and $600,000 on the tax levy, which at $58,000 per penny, we're over 10 cents worth of tax levy, which is more than our levy limits allow us to go up for the entire city.
Can we farm that out?
We could. We hired 1 engineer. You were on council, but I don't think you were on the committee at the time. We actually contracted with an engineer from what? Patrick Engineering. And we actually brought him in-house, so he was embedded with our staff. That 1 engineer for the year cost me $200,000.
So, and I get that you say it's not a popular discussion, but I will say that it's a discussion I want to have. But
I
I'm
do as
looking
well.
to you for guidance about whether this is the time to have it, or I presume you're preparing a 5-year plan like the other departments
Yes, we
for
are.
finance. Maybe that's the appropriate time to have that conversation. But I want you to know that I'm not afraid to have that conversation. I think we need to talk about it.
The other thing that we are doing, and it's starting to be reflected in this year's plan, my staff is looking, we are also identifying streets that are candidate for resurfacing that do not have sanitary, storm, or water upgrades necessary. If we can simply go in there, mill it, black it, and get out of there, we actually have those streets. We've expanded the resurfacing program this year to try to get those numbers up, and that's how we're looking at doing it.
Okay. You talked about the dewatering of the waste with
Yeah.
the vehicles. You know, it just kind of occurred to me, I would presume now that the Fox River cleanup is done, they're gonna probably do some type of decommissioning with that treatment facility. The one that's
Yes.
over by GP in that area. I mean, I just bring that up because that's basically what they did with the sediment, right? That they pulled off the rivers, they dewatered it, and
Yep.
then they trucked it out. I just bring it up as something, I don't know if that even makes sense, but
No, I will and Jim and I started off with the project, and then over time, when Jim came on board, it makes more sense for Jim to be involved with this. So we have worked hand in hand with that Fox River cleanup group over the last several years. For us to reach out and have a conversation, even if they've got equipment that they might be disposing of at less than market price.
right. Well,
Or
I
we
even
could
think
pick something
too,
up.
I mean, I even think too, if we're having this problem, some of our local municipalities might be having that same problem.
Sure.
And is there some kind of group purchase that could potentially make sense there?
Absolutely. That's
What
a
I
great
don't
idea.
know is if that equipment can do what you need it to do.
It can. What I need to find out is if they have something small, because obviously their equipment's massive.
Okay.
They're doing thousands of tons, and I need to dewater a street sweeper,
Sure.
6,000 gallons or so.
And then the last question that I had, when we look at the supported borrowing for stormwater utility and sanitary, and I look over, obviously, at the revenue rates from those, is it correct to assume that the debt service on those particular bonds are then covered through those respective revenue
is
budgets?
correct.
Okay, so
That
our
becomes-
rates are enough to cover the maintenance on those two things?
Well, and that's why our rates, that's part of the reason why our rates are inching up.
Right.
Because we have to cover that debt service, and that ties into the other conversation that we just had relative to increase the amount of road work we're doing. It's not just the road. When we reconstruct the road, we have to make sure that the utilities under it are gonna last at least as long as the road does, otherwise we're putting good money after bad. You put a brand-new street, and 2 years later, the sanitary sewer has a problem, now we gotta dig up that brand-new street to fix the sanitary. So we wanna take care of everything at once. As we increase the amount of streets that we're doing, that's going to increase the amount of sanitary, storm, and water that can be done. Sanitary and storm, we have a little bit more latitude with because we control those utilities, and if that means I gotta raise people's sanitary rates by $1, okay, that's what we're gonna do.
Right.
But water utility is PSC regulated, and they have a water commission. I can't just tell them, oh, by the way, we're doing this, and you guys gotta raise your water rates by this much.
Okay.
It requires a little bit more finesse and cooperation.
And then maybe just one more, as a hypothetical. We look at your request to bond 12 million, we'll round it up.
Yep,
If I said, hey, you know what, Steve, we want to give you 14 million. Could you even do anything with that extra money in the coming year in terms of road repair? or
actually, I can't.
What's the cycle? Yeah.
I can't, my staff is maxed out right now.
So it's the engineers that you need before you
Yes.
can even do something with added funding.
And several of the projects that you see in here, we actually have consultant engineers working on.
So-
I'm already using farmed out work.
So what's the soonest, if, again, hypothetical, we give you additional funding, what's the soonest that we could see an impact on that? Next year?
I would say it's about 18 months between the time that you give me a go and seeing an impact, because it's gonna take me 6 months to hire somebody. Engineers aren't out there. We've just gone through a couple of recruitments. We're getting people with business degrees applying for engineering positions. I can't get degree engineers to apply. There's not enough people going into engineering in the first place. There's not enough people of the engineers who are going to engineering school. Nobody's going into civil. And anybody who's coming out with a civil engineering degree, because the economy is taking off right now, they're all going into private practice and making money. So nobody wants to work for a municipality.
So I would maybe let personnel, kind of address that, and I think it sounds like something they do need to talk about. But if we're looking at 18 months to do something, I mean, it seems to me that now's the time we ought to be talking about engineering additions.
I agree with you.
And I'm the new guy at the table. How unprecedented is it to bond for the addition of an engineer? Because
It
their
violates
work
our-
would
it
still,
violates our bonding policy.
okay. So that has to be paid through the annual budget?
Yeah. Yeah, our bonding, it's not an ordinance, I guess it is a bonding policy, isn't it? The asset you're bonding for has to have a life exceeding the term of the bond.
Mhm.
And personnel doesn't, because an engineer could leave tomorrow.
Does a contract, an engineering contract?
And with that, I don't know, that, I guess I would ask you to have that conversation with finance and law. I'm not the
Okay.
proper person to discuss that.
And I don't even know sitting here if that's the right decision. I'm just asking the question to get
Sure.
some information because I want to see more roads fixed.
I
I think
don't
everybody does.
disagree with you.
And I want to figure out how we can do that.
And the reason I say 18 months, like I said, it's gonna take us at least 6 months to get somebody onboarded. And then once I get them on, our experience has shown it takes a full year for them to be comfortable in the saddle. Generally speaking, it takes 2 years for them to become proficient, but in a year, they're functional.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Johnson?
I'm good.
Alderman Wery?
Thanks. Yeah, we have to figure something out with that engineering. Seems like we're always adding people.
Yep.
We're gearing up and then we lose them, and then takes 2 years to gear up and then we're losing them, and then so we're always in that constant.
Recruit and train.
And then they leave once they get trained.
Well, I can tell you that I have received a lot of thanks from other public works departments for providing them with well-trained engineers.
The wheel tax summary, so really, if I'm hearing this right, there's really not much we can even do with it. We get to approve it and review it every year, but what could we really do with it? We couldn't add a street. I mean, if we asked you, what's the next poorest street that almost made the cut, and if you had a little more money, you would have done, we just add it in and say, farm out the engineering to whatever engineering firm and do this extra street, right? Whatever the next street is on that list. Hickory Hill from Oneida to 12th Street, for instance. I mean, if we're gonna pick one out of the air.
Well, I can pick some too.
You know where I'm going? I mean, I
No,
know we get to
yeah.
review it and look at it, what can we really do with it if we're so hamstrung a year and a half out.
Why do we have it then?
It's more of a report than a, because I too would like to see, part of me, yes, was eliminating the assessments, but I've always hounded on the doubling, and I know maybe that wasn't super realistic, but I firmly believe we had to do a lot more, and obviously our income's not gonna be anywhere near what we thought it was gonna be, so that hurts it right from the get-go. If you had another 600,000, would you have been able to add a couple more
Again,
streets, or-
this year, I don't think we could have, just because of the situation we're in with the engineering
Yeah.
staff. Every year, every month, my staff gets more seat time, they get better. I went through and took a look. In the 6 years that I've been the director here, I didn't count if a position turned over more than once. I simply looked, how many of the people in the engineering department were sitting in that seat 6 years ago when I took over? And we had, in engineering, we had 71% turnover. Administrative division, I've got in excess of 100% turnover. When you actually add up that some of those folks, some of those positions have changed hands multiple times, I think I was at about 135% turnover in engineering in 6 years. So again, as you alluded to, when you're in that train,
Yeah.
recruit, lose cycle, the efficiencies go away. Now we've got a pretty stable group of people, and we're starting to get more pushed out with the same group of people, comparable to where we were in 2008 when I got here, and we had some long-term employees. So that's going to help. We are continuing to work with some consultant engineers, getting them on board, developing some efficiencies in how they're doing some design with the hope of farming more work out. Obviously, it's going to increase in cost because I got to pay consultants, but if that's what we need to do, that's what we're going to do.
I think we have to.
And-
I just, because it's impossible to have that discussion with somebody out in the community, Joe or Mary or whoever, and say, well, we'd love to do more roads, but we don't have an engineer.
And
And
I-
every year say that.
I would've
They look at you
loved
like
to-
you're crazy, right?
And
Do
we
more
don't
roads.
know-
Well,
We don't know
we
what we're
can't.
gonna see after a year with the vehicle registration fees. I'm hoping the numbers come up, but I fiscally, I've gotta be conservative on this. And if the numbers do come up, then absolutely, that's exactly what we look to do is, if we can get an engineer on staff, that's great. But if that doesn't work out from our budget perspective, then we gotta go to Plan B, and Plan B is contracting.
The 500,000, that looks like it's probably just going for a reduction in borrowing, right? The 496.
Well, otherwise, we would have to bond. That's what it means.
Um,
Yes.
If that were shifted into a project, would that get you much, if anything? I mean, it would pay for an engineer partly, or it would, but then how much of a road would that do? Let's say you had 100,000, 150,000 for an engineer, you had 300,000 left for a road. How much a road would that do? A small residential street,
Couple of
resurfacing?
blocks.
Okay, so I mean, is that something we could even do if we shifted it? Could you have a next street, you could say, hey, whatever street it is, Maple Street, or, yeah, you say it's fine.
Maple's rough.
We could definitely look, I mean, we do have,
Yeah, you must have some streets that are like
Abs-
right there. I mean, and it's 2, 3, 4 blocks long, and it just needs to be scraped off and redone.
yeah, we can definitely do that. I will tell you, when it goes to Finance Committee,
Like, I know they want to bond. We all want to bond, but we also want to do more streets. So we're kind of in
yep,
there.
it's gonna get tight.
Oh,
So
sure. Yeah,
I've been trying to
understand
balance
that.
things as best I
Yep.
can.
And then it looks like you've very complete there. It's appreciated.
So-
I would be in favor of moving that over and picking off your next street. And if you have any
And
numbers
what-
on that, if you could have it ready for finance or ready for council, but
What I could do is I could tell you we're gonna try, but I can't promise you I can get another street in.
could you throw together some numbers for us so that we at least have a
Yeah, we
Discussion.
can take a
Okay.
look at it, sure.
Yeah, if you could, I'd appreciate it. Because that was a big thing. Yes, get rid of assessment, but do more streets. And then I had a question on the parking ramps.
Yep.
The 650,000 on repairs,
Mm-hmm.
that's for 2 ramps, right? Or am I,
That's actually at all three.
3, okay. So if we added another ramp in the future, we'd add another, well, it's probably new, so it might not be repaired.
It's not necessarily scalable on number, it's more a function of age.
Okay. Nothing was ever factored in somehow with
Nope.
rates that we built in a, I mean, that's a big number for parking ramps. I mean, it
Yes, it
seems
is.
like when we build a parking ramp, we need to figure out a fund that they can just build up repairs within. can we support that with fees in the ramps? to
It's a discussion that we want to have with you, and that's exactly what we're looking at
Okay.
doing, is raising our parking rates to cover that and have that. What we're doing right now is we're taking that and using it to cover the debt service.
Okay.
But rather than borrowing the money and doing debt service,
Yeah.
to put a fund in there to cover it out of our operating budget, yeah, that's
We
definitely
don't
a
want
better way
sky
to go.
rates, but we need to, that's a huge
Exactly, again,
number.
balancing between bonding and.
Steve, didn't we address that already about 6, 8 months ago? I got turned down. Raising the fees for the ramps.
Well, I think the fee raised it, but I think the argument on it was that there wasn't necessarily a plan. So if you came back with a plan and said,
Sure.
this is what we need it for, I think
Yeah.
you'd get more support for it.
Well, let's see the plan.
No,
Lord.
I think what you're remembering, Alderman Nicholson, was,
Last summer. I think it was last summer.
well, the one that I remember, and maybe I'm remembering wrong.
We were in room
Was-
310.
Yeah, we were talking about the parking agreement at the lot at on the corner of Broadway and Walnut,
Okay.
and bumping that up to try to get some,
Like a fund
Unrestricted
for a
funds.
future ramp.
yeah.
Isn't
that's
that
the
related to
discussion
what
that
we're
we're
just
having.
talking about?
It's a, parallel
Well,
discussion.
let's have a plan.
Yep.
Let's bring a plan, let's get that going. We already wasted 8 months, 9 months on it. So,
I guess-
Alderman Worry, you got anything
Well, I
else?
think for now, that's, given the realities of what we have coming in with the revenue, at least this year, till we get a good handle on it, and knowing that we'll hopefully have some numbers on maybe picking off another project, which I'm hoping we can do, I'm fine with moving this forward.
Okay. Well, I got a question, Steve. What about Main Street? Deal with the flooding over on the east side. Is that in this capital improvement program?
No, that is not in this year's program.
And why is that?
That you would have to, I can't tell you offhand, I would have to have a discussion with Matt Heckenlifel.
Okay.
Matt is the one who's.
Well, that's why I want to keep that going on every
Oh.
agenda.
Yeah, definitely.
So why can't we deal with that in this report?
Well, what I would say is Matt picked the streets based on the
Okay.
order of importance that he's seeing.
And the council reviews it, and then they decide they basically decide then, don't they? When it comes to
As far as
finances?
selecting the
No,
actual.
the finances, where we want to spend the money.
Let's just say if there's something more,
Yeah,
if you want to add.
right.
We need to know where and how much.
I mean, I would like to see Main Street addressed in this. With the issues that we've had last summer. Is that possible, Steve?
Personally, I don't think it is. I think it's cost prohibitive. We're not gonna be able to solve that problem in 1 year. That's gonna involve upsizing sewers all the way from behind McDonald's.
Well, how do we start it then, Steve?
Well, we are starting to pick it off with some of these other projects. For instance, when we picked up the Elizabeth Street storm sewer last year, that took that university piece. One of the things that Matt is looking at and he's working with is the developers who are looking at redoing something over at the East Town Mall.
Okay,
And we're looking at putting underground linear detention basins in underneath the parking lot at East Town. So that'll slow all the water that's coming off the hill from even getting down to that Main and Mason intersection. And by slowing that water down, the water that falls, gets into the storm sewer, has a chance to get downstream before the stuff in the tanks winds up getting down there, so you use the same pipe twice, kind of thing. So we're working on some other things besides simply making a bigger pipe.
but eventually don't we need a bigger pipe?
Not necessarily. If we can slow that water down so we can use that same pipe multiple times, that's probably gonna be a heck of a lot more cost effective than trying to build a bigger pipe. 'Cause the
Right,
bigger
but will
pipe-
that take care of the problem?
Yep,
It will.
yeah.
Okay, when do we see that then?
Again, we continue to work with the developers. It's gonna be, part of that's gonna be dependent on when that developer decides to do the modifications on that East Town Mall property.
Okay, and that could be what?
Were they given an
could be
extension
that.
recently, right?
It could
Because
be
I remember-
years. It could be years, Steve, right?
What's that?
It could be years.
It was the end of the year.
In addition to that, when we're resurfacing, when we're reconstructing streets, we're doing storm sewer upgrades at that time. That's why the storm sewer costs associated with the resurfacing program continues to jump up the way that it has.
Right. I guess I would like to see something done, something more than just wait for a developer. That could happen in 12 to 25 years from now. I mean, we gotta wait for a developer?
We had, I mean,
Wait, really?
that report had $100 million worth of issues around that same thing, right? So what's the next step for that issue as a whole? I mean, I get your interest in Main Street, but, I agree with you. What's the
Yeah, I
next
put
step?
something in over 5 years ago on that. I'm still
Yeah.
waiting, nothing's happening. We're waiting for a developer. I mean, is that what we want? It's not what I want. There's a lot of people that live in the area. So what can we do, Steve? That's my question. What can we do?
To be honest with you, Alderman, I don't know what more outside of don't do this project, do this one instead. You know, like I said, here, we have been working in that Farland area, Farland, Elizabeth, Eastman, Preble Street, not town of Preble, for the last couple of years. That's where the Smith St. George, that's gonna tie into that Webster Avenue storm sewer. You know, we've been working up there, and here again this year, we're putting another $800,000 into Dans and Farland. The resurfacing program, when we look at, sewer rehab for the resurfacing program, there's $1.5 million worth of storm sewer work that's going on as part of our resurfacing program, and a lot of those streets are in the Preble area. So you don't necessarily see a particular street called out in the CIP, because all the streets that are part of the resurfacing program have storm sewer work. We're picking away at it every time we do a street.
Right.
So it's not that nothing's happening.
What is happening then over
Well-
Main Street?
Offhand, I can't tell you. I would have to take a look and find out what streets are part of the resurfacing program this year. But streets that are draining to those main street sewers, we're doing the upgrades, and we just keep picking away at it moving forward.
Right, when is Main Street gonna be picked away? Schwartz, Mason Street. You know, I put that in over 5 years ago, Steve, and we're looking at Farland and for the second time, you know, when are we gonna take a look at Main Street? I guess I'd like to see Main Street included somewhere real. I mean, I've been waiting for over 5 years, Steve. When I put my first communication in, it got buried. And then now I had to put another one in after we had a perfect storm. So I guess what are we doing with that area? I guess what are the concerns of the committee?
Sure. Is this going to the next finance committee, basically? Is
That
it-
was
is
the
it that
intent.
quick? Yeah, okay, so there's really no time. Is there something that you could bring, an option or two regarding that Main Street corridor? Some low-hanging
I-
fruit, you know?
Well, there are no low-hanging fruit out there, that's the
Yeah,
problem. Okay, we're talking about, the issue, two biggest issues we've got with that Main Street area is, number one, that used to be Ellis Creek, and Ellis Creek is in a box now. Back in the 70s, we took Ellis Creek and put it in a pipe. There are newspaper articles, I've got copies of them up in my office, where the DNR said, you're not allowed to do that. The Public Works Director at the time said, watch me. And he did, okay? The other issue is something that we also see in areas on the west side, where the storm sewer was designed. Now, some of it was our design, a lot of it was the old town of Preble. A lot of the town of Preble sewers weren't designed, period. They just stuck a pipe in the ground and hoped for the best. Some of them were designed for a 2-year storm, some of them were designed for a 5-year storm. We designed to a 10-year storm, and people criticize us for that it's not big enough. The development, when the sewers were designed, it assumed that there was going to be a certain density of development, and the basin was going to be this big, okay? We've got one of them that discharges by Georgia Pacific, the Broadway mill. The original design for that line assumed 350 acres at what we refer to as a C factor of 0.2. So think 20% density for comparative purposes. In actuality, that basin is over 500 acres and it's got a C factor of 0.5. So it's under-designed by almost a factor of 3. Okay, you have to start at the discharge point at the river and go all the way up Liberty to Ridge and upsize the entire sewer if you want to fix it. That's the situation we're stuck with on Main Street. So instead of, I don't know that I can build a pipe big enough to hold the water I need to build without it sticking out of the ground. So instead, what we're doing is we're trying to do other things on streets that are draining into that sewer to slow that water down so that the Main Street water can get out before the side street water gets in.
And we have to wait for the developer, and that could be over 20 years from now.
Not necessarily.
Not
We're-
necessarily?
We're talking to the developer about us going in there,
Okay?
but it's working with the developer.
Well, don't we pretty much hold all the cards there? I think their extension ran out at the end of the year, right? So I don't even know, are they really still proceeding? Yeah, maybe you would know more than me with that Easttown development. Didn't
Oh, yeah.
We gave them through the end of December, didn't we?
I don't know the particulars
Yeah.
on the extension, but yeah, they're still working on it, yeah.
So you would need funding to do a project if we just did it, if we went in and.
Well, I
did
would
it,
also
or-
need permission from the property owner. I can't go on a private property and just build something.
Well, with all the negotiations and everything, I mean, how much money you need in case we have to go in? If, let's say we do have permission.
I will have to check with Matt to find out what the cost of the East Town Mall detention project is.
Okay, when can we get that into this then?
TIF.
It's in the TIF.
Offhand, I don't
That
know.
would be TIF expenses.
When can we find out, Steve?
I will have to check with Matt tomorrow morning to find out if if he has something even more than a concept design.
Mhm.
If it's just a concept design on how big he thinks it's gotta be, and we have to sit down and actually design the underground detention system, then I'll have to find out what the schedule is for design. Then we're gonna have to make sure that we get permission to enter the property.
Okay?
Would this be about as big as the one that was put in with the Packers, or are you talking bigger?
No, it's gonna be in the
Okay.
same general size, maybe a
Packers
little
did
bigger.
this. Dug up their parking lot and built a huge.
Any other question? Questions, Alderman Weary?
No, I appreciate you guys being willing to really try and grapple this. You give good reasons why we can't do stuff, but for, I think, the average citizen, they just hear excuses, right? And I don't mean that, not ripping you, they hear, oh, God, no, can't, that's why we can't do
Well,
it.
if Matt has an idea, then how do we get that into this program, Steve?
I think we need to.
Here. We'll bring it back.
All right, so do we hold this then?
All we're doing is we're delaying our ability to get anything done this year. But yeah, that would be your answer. I will tell you that it has.
I'm just asking for help,
It
Steve,
has,
that's all.
it has always been staff that has selected the projects.
Oh, that's fine.
That has always been.
I guess my question is, well, you know, I've been trying to work with you for years on Main and Schwartz and Mason. When do I get a piece of the pie to solve that area?
You've been getting them. As we do the streets over there, we have been upgrading the sewers. That, when Matt came in and gave you the report a couple of months ago, he was showing all of the red lines that have been turned into green in the
I
prevalent.
guess I'm more specific with Main and Mason, right in that area to pick and save. Not Elizabeth and down in, I don't know what you call it, Johnson Creek or down in that area. But basically, right where all that flooding was for the last couple of years.
And the two instances that come to mind were a 500-year storm and a 1,000-year storm. I don't care
I've had
how
it.
big you make that pipe, it's not gonna handle it. It's simply, I can't build a pipe big enough to take those storm events.
I've had issues before on that area, and Schwartz and Mason Street. And they didn't have a perfect storm, or whatever you call it. It was just basically a heavy rainstorm.
And
And
a
I'm not
lot-
talking about the one from last year, I'm talking one,
A lot of that
over
is
the years.
legacy stuff that's left over from the town of Preble. And as we are reconstructing or resurfacing those streets, we are bumping those storm sewers up to current design.
Well, can you, I mean,
we're
we're,
gonna get missed, I don't know.
finance isn't gonna meet for another 2 weeks. So can you bring back a report to this committee when we meet next? And then if we've got a number, if your staff has it, then Alder Nicholson can try to add that to the report at that time. Does that make sense? I mean, it seems, because next council meeting's next week, we're still not taking this issue up at the next meeting.
Is that true, Steve?
Yep, and we're meeting the day after the next finance committee.
Okay, then we're gonna have to meet before, aren't we?
That could be a problem.
Looking for help, Steve, that's all.
No, I understand, I understand. There's only so much I can do, and I was gonna tell you under the director's report that we've got the next meeting scheduled for Wednesday, March 13th, and we were gonna recommend that start at 6 o'clock because we have to have 2 public hearings.
That's fine, but let's get to the issue on maybe a special meeting to see if Matt can give us a figure.
I will sit down and work with Matt to see what we can come up with.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could, Mr. Chair, maybe at
Yes.
that meeting, have the, back to the other issue of shifting the money over from the wheel tax for a road, then we can handle them both at the same time and decide
Yep,
if that
that-
should be.
Again,
That one's easier.
Again, I'll pick another street, and we'll stick it in there, and we'll boost up the bonding by another $500,000. But I'm going to be very honest with everybody up front. It's likely a paper tiger. I have given you everything that my staff can do. There's
And that's
no
why we
way
were talking about farming it out. I think people, I'm tired of hearing reasons why we can't do stuff. I don't care. People don't care. They want it done. Let's find a way to do it. Getting impatient with it. I understand, completely understand, but when you try and explain that, people are like, don't care, get it done, figure out a way, let's figure out a way. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong if you're wrong, I
And B
interrupt you.
is-
That's what I'm getting.
There's a frustration in the community that we're not getting it done, and we're not. Whatever
So-
the reason is, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, we're just not getting it done.
Proper motion then is to hold until our next meeting?
Your decision.
I know, I'm asking the committee.
Of course, our next meeting is after the finance, so we're not gonna be able to give them a
We'll have it
report.
before finance.
And then we'll also have another meeting for the
We'll just have those two
Okay.
items on the agenda.
motion of,
Motion by Weary to hold, and then we will basically talk to the committee and find out a time where we can meet.
and I'm not trying to be rough on you guys, whatever you need, let us know. Honestly, if it's
Yeah,
more
we're just asking for
engineers
help, Steve.
in that 5-year plan, great. If you need to farm more out, let us know and we'll back you up. I mean, you gotta get this done. Community has said this is what we want. Give us ways to do it and we'll help you.
Second by Johnson, under discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays, motion carried, moving forward. 5, consideration of possible action on the review and award of a contract, elevator modernization, Green Bay City Hall rebid. Director Grenier?
I'm going to defer to Director Ditchite. We discussed this at Finance Committee last night, and based off of what we heard at Finance, would you like us to award this contract?
Yeah, so at last night's Finance Committee, they approved the bond request of, I believe, $570,000 in additional bonding to pay to award the base bid, the 3 alternates, and then $80,000 for contingency. So based on their recommendation, which goes to the full city council next week, I think we would recommend that you award the bid, and then you can talk about it as a whole next week if you want to at the council meeting. But I would recommend approving it at this point.
Okay, any questions or concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve approve awarding the contract elevator modernization Green Bay City Hall rebid.
That would be to Zeise Construction for base bid and all three alternates in the amount of $902,345.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to approve by Worry, second by okay, the motion failed. Alderman Johnson, do you want the floor? And
I'll just express the same concern I did at the last meeting, which is, I mean, almost $1 million taxpayer funds without a competitive bid. We've got one bid. I have no idea if we're paying the right price here or not, but aside from that, it goes back to, I understand the elevator needs to be serviced, but a lot of things need to be serviced right now, and could this thing carry on another year and potentially open us up to some additional bid opportunities?
Well, we've bid this twice. We've held meetings with prospective contract. We've done everything that we could to make sure that we had the best bidding environment, and only one contractor elected to submit a bid.
And I'm not questioning the process, Steve. It's,
I think we could bid this thing 7 times over the next year and not get anything different or anything better. That's my professional opinion, is I think this is it. I don't like to squander money, period. And I'm recommending you award this thing.
how significant of a priority is this? I mean,
If the
what's the real
elevators
issue
fail,
here?
if the elevators fail, City Hall becomes non-ADA compliant, which is a big deal.
But both elevators would have to fail at the same time.
Yep, they are the original elevators from 1956. In my professional opinion, and Dan's professional, we've talked about this a lot, the potential is there. We had one elevator go down 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 to 3 years ago, it was down for 2 weeks because they couldn't find a replacement part, so they had to fabricate a part locally. If we do have a catastrophic failure of the elevators, where they both fail at the same time and we do have to replace the system, those elevators would be out for months, not weeks. By the time we find the funding to do it, by the time we bid out the project and then actually order the parts and do the project and have it constructed, it's months that those elevators would be down. And that would cause a lot of chaos for public meetings, for the general public to access any of the departments. It would be very problematic. Typically, elevators like ours last 30 to 40 years. Ours are over 60 years old. I can't tell you if they're going to last another year, another 5 years. I can't predict that, but I will tell you, we're on a time clock where these could fail at any time. We usually have one breakdown probably about once a month. Usually they're out pretty quick within the same day, but sometimes they can be down several days. So they do break down quite often, and I guess as a staff, we're conscious of the age of these and the fact that if we were to have a catastrophic failure, it would be very problematic to run City Hall.
Refresh my memory, did the second bid go down at all, or did it stay?
The second
above?
bid went down about $150,000
over
from last fall,
Yeah, okay,
right around there.
something.
you want to make a motion, Alderman Johnson? You want to just send it to City Council?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I'll just send it to City Council with no recommendation. Moving forward, number
I'll vote yes to
6.
City Council.
Pardon?
That's not, I'll vote yes to City Council.
Consideration of possible action on application of tree and brush trimmer license, best stump grinding, Director Grenier.
They've held a license with us in the past, recommend approval.
Motion by Worry to approve, second by Johnson. Our discussion here, none. All in favor? Nays, motion carried. Director's report, Grenier.
As I mentioned to you earlier, we're recommending that, because we have 2 public hearings that need to be held on March 13th.
6 o'clock
That we recommend a start time of 5 o'clock.
or 5
For the
o'clock?
regularly scheduled, unless we have a special meeting, at which time we could have the If it's just gonna be the public hearings, we can start that at 6.
Sounds good.
Obviously, we've been dealing with a lot of snow and ice events. The storms keep stacking up about every 2 to 3 days. Staff is doing everything that they possibly can to make sure that we're managing this. That one over the weekend was just absolutely bizarre. We only had about 6 hours between the time the snow started falling and the time that the temperature started falling below freezing to try to get around the city and do as much as we could. So the intent there was trying not to do damage and get things, at least the travel lane, cleared out. Today helped out quite a bit, but we've got storms, another one coming Friday and another one coming Sunday if the weather reports are to be believed. We ran out of places to actually plow the snow 2 weeks ago. Major arterials, we were plowing it, it was coming right off of the banks and clearing, loading up the outside lanes, so we did go into a snow hole. Pulled everything downtown so we could reopen the parking lanes, started getting out on the major arterials, then we got hit with another storm. I know I've been getting a lot of complaints relative to sidewalks and sidewalks not being cleared. Out of my 4 motorized sidewalk units, I had 3 of them broken down due to damage and overuse. We went out, we rented 2 units, I broke one of those. Went out and we rented 4 snow blowers, conventional walk-behind snow blowers, just to get on things, and I broke 2 of those.
I can't imagine, some of the stuff under this light snow is like
Nice.
diamond material.
Yeah.
Trying to,
Well,
broke a
usually
chipper.
with the tool cats,
Yeah? Oh, yeah.
the tool cats have salt units on the back, so after we plow and then we salt, but when the tool cats are broken down, now I even lost that capability. So everything from hydraulic units or hydraulic lines on loaders to on busting pins and hydraulic cylinders on my grader wings from hitting these icy banks trying to plow stuff back. I mean,
Flamethrowers.
that might be an option.
Fairly inexpensive.
Steve, I know you're getting a lot of pressure and questions, from different people on snow removal. I'm getting a lot of questions in particular from the commercial area within my district. Obviously, a very heavy pedestrian front. I mean, we've got people climbing snowbanks. I mean, I'm looking over at Copper Rock. They literally had someone in a wheelchair get stuck the other day because they've got no sidewalk there. I mean, when can we maybe expect something over in that area?
We know it's there. You're on the list. We're getting there as quickly as we can.
How do we get up that list?
I can check with Tony to find out, or I have no problem with you calling Tony Fieser to ask where you are on the list. But we have been coming out of plow, recover.
And I understand that, and that's why I say, there's obviously just been other areas in the city that have been cleared, and of course, I get there's priorities, but much to Chris's point, right, the residents just want to see it done, and so they come to me and be like, well, the east side of the river had it done, how come I'm not done? And it's just, no matter what excuse I give them, it doesn't settle them, they just want to know when it's going to be done. And so, I mean, I'm happy to talk to Tony, but I think sometimes it helps too if you could put a bug in his ear. Like I said, I'm thinking about that poor person that got caught in a wheelchair, and if someone wouldn't have come around, they're stuck there waiting until someone comes to help them, because there literally is no sidewalk left over there. So,
Well, the honest answer is the unpopular answer, and that is it's actually the business's responsibility to get rid of all that.
and where would you have them go with it?
I don't know what to tell you.
And I can get it's an unpopular answer, but that's not the answer we gave some other parts of the downtown area. So
And
the answer we gave to other parts was that we took care of it.
we said we will take care of this, we gotta get there.
Okay. So,
And I don't know when that is.
all right.
Okay, I'll accept the motion to receive and place on file.
So
By
moved.
Worry, second by Johnson, under discussion, here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Worry, second by Johnson, we're adjourned.
Attention.
I'm gonna leave soon. So.
How soon?